Hey Lily, I know you love your PSP, but if I could just borrow it if you don't mind, because ARK-5 just came out and I think this thing is running yeah, it's still running ARK-4, so we got to get this thing sorted. So anyways, Lily, I'll be right back. I'm going to update your system. Just enjoy yourself. Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario. We're back over here at the PSP yet again because there's been some pretty exciting stuff that has happened here from my previous video I covered, which was how to install the ARK-5 custom firmware. Yes, the current ARK-4 custom firmware is no longer the current one. It has been successfully succeeded by ARK-5, which it states here is still a next generation custom firmware for PSP and Vita's ePSP. Although I'm just going to be covering it here for the PSP. You can see here with some of the features, it does have an easier installation and usage, better plugin management in the XMB, true overclocking for all PSP models, as well as improved memory management for consoles with extra RAM, so really anything above a 1000 model, and lots of under-the-hood fixes and improvements. So if any of those interest you in upgrading your already modified PSP to ARK-5, you might want to keep watching this video. And yes, if you have a PSP like this, I said overclocking. I'm talking about overclocking, real, actual, true overclocking on the PSP. I've got it set up on my PSP Go right here, but you're no longer just limited to 333 megahertz. You can go hopefully all the way up to 443 megahertz, although do keep in mind, you're going to have to make sure that your PSP has won the Silicon Lottery if it's gone that far, and if you're able to successfully overclock that high, you might want to purchase a lottery ticket. I'm not promoting gambling here, but what I'm saying is you are lucky for that PSP you have. This one here ends up clocking at 383 megahertz successfully and stably, but I do know there's PSPs that can go higher, and you could see the numbers. We can actually go above 333 for really the first time in the custom firmware itself. Now this video here is going to be designed to show you all if you have an already modified PSP, that means a PSP running custom firmware already, how you can get it up to date and running on the latest ARK-5 custom firmware. If you have not modified your PSP, you're not running custom firmware, and you need to start from scratch, I'm going to have a previous video which shows how to install ARK-5 on a completely stock firmware. It goes through all the processes, it breaks down how to actually use the PSP and all that stuff, so for this video, I'm not going to be going into the nitty-gritty of that. This is really just going to be the upgrade process here, and I'm going to highlight a few ways of doing it because, well, sometimes nothing can be easy. This is going to hopefully be easy, but depending on your situation, you're going to have to pick from a few options here. Now for our prerequisites here, first of all, you do need your PSP up and running and working and running custom firmware. Keep in mind this can work on any PSP out there. That means the 1000, 2000, 3000, Street, and the Go. As long as you have a working PSP running custom firmware, you'll be able to sort through this here. You're also going to need a battery for your PSP. You will need a battery. It does need to be charged up on here, and this is going to be in case you need to update the actual firmware itself. It would also be recommended to have a charger on hand and make sure it is plugged in while you're doing any of these operations. You're going to notice I'm not doing that with my system here, but that's more because, well, I trust what I'm doing here. So I'm going to trust that it won't brick, and even if it does, I do have ways to recover my own systems. You're also going to need some storage on hand, whether you're going to use a Memory Stick Pro Duo or you're going to use a micro SD card adapter on here. You can use a micro SD card, and it would not be recommended to go higher than 128 gigabytes. You can run into issues, corruption, and all that stuff, and just don't do it. Just stay at 128 gigabytes or lower if you're going to be using an option such as this. But either way, as long as you have one of these options here, you should be good. Unless, of course, you have a PSP Go, and if you have a PSP Go, it has built-in internal 16 gigabytes of storage available, so you won't need that, but you are going to need a USB cable for your PSP Go. Although do keep in mind the PSP Go can also take external storage, whether you want to use the proprietary M2 card, or if you want to physically modify your system to use a micro SD card, you can do that and it will work here, but it's going to be up to you. Now, whether you're using either one of these options here, you do need to get it to adapt to a device where you can transfer files to and from the micro SD card or the memory stick itself, whichever you're going to be using here. I'm personally going to use a computer for this. If you want to use another device, that's up to you. But for the remainder of this tutorial, I'm going to be referring to it as my computer, since again, that's what I'm going to use. Now, for these here, if you just want to hook up your PSP through USB, you can certainly do that. Of course, if you have a PSP Go, you're going to need to use the proprietary cable, but if you have have any other PSP, you're going to use a mini USB cable such as this. Just keep in mind that the mini USB cable needs to be compatible with data transfer. It cannot just be power. Or if you don't want to use that, you can also use something like this. If you're using a micro SD card, this is going to be a SD and micro SD to USB adapter, which works pretty well for my usage. So this is what I'm personally going to use. Just keep in mind here, when you're using the USB option, you'll need to navigate over to your settings, go over to USB connection, and enable that in order to use this through USB. Aside from that, that's pretty much all the prerequisites here. Now what we need to do is actually check our current firmware on our system to see which option you'll need to go with, because I'm going to highlight 3 different options and methods in this video here. For that, I'm also going to have a little bit of a PSP party by bringing this system and, well, this system in place here, because, well, different systems are going to have different needs, at least in my household here. In order to check this, you'll need to navigate all the way over to System Settings. Within System Settings here, you'll need to go to System Information, and within System Information, look at the system software and look at that string right there. Now you can see here, this system is running 6.61 ARK-5 CFW, which is great because if you're already running ARK-4, that means you have the easiest option right here. Just go ahead and skip to the upgrading from ARK-4 section. The next one here is going to be a legacy custom firmware. I'll go ahead and navigate over to System Settings yet again and System Information. And you can see right here, this one is running quite an old custom firmware, which is M33-4 on firmware 5.00. So for this, we're going to be using Despertar Del Cementerio, or you're going to be using Chronoswitch if that one does not work for you. Again, I'm going to have a timestamp in place, so I would suggest just jumping over to the Despertar Del Cementerio one, and if that does not work for you, which I'll explain in that section, then you're going to want to go with Chronoswitch. And finally, if you have a PSP such as this one where you check it out, and it just straight up says version and it has a number right there, well, that means that you are running a completely stock, unmodified, official firmware system, which in that case, I would actually redirect you to my previous video. Just keep in mind, I'm still going to be using this system in this video just for the demonstration, but if you're running into something like this, again, watch the installation video, not the upgrade video. So for our first option, this is going to be the easiest one, and for people who are already running ARK-4. If you're running ARK-4, go ahead and get your PSP hooked up to your computer, because we're going to download and transfer over a couple files. You'll be able to find everything on the Faster ARK page right here, which will be linked down below in the description. And for this here, we're going to be using the instructions for ARK-4 users on any device. Now what you'll need to do if you're going to be doing this is you'll need to navigate over to the releases section, and the 2 downloads you're going to need are first going to be the ARK update zip and the themes.zip. Download and save those somewhere you can easily find them. If you're having trouble extracting any of these archives, I'd recommend using something such as 7-zip. Download, install it, and it should be easy enough to use. Now with those 2 downloaded, we're just going to highlight the both of these zips, and we're going to extract them both out right here. That should give you a PSP folder as well as a themes folder. What we need to do is just highlight the both of these, right click, copy them, make sure you have your PSP storage hooked up, navigate into it, right click, and paste. Now, I don't have anything on this drive here, but if there's any folders that ask you to merge them, you're going to want to do that. And if there's any files that ask you to overwrite, you're also going to want to overwrite those files. So there we go, that's all set up. We have our themes available. On top of that, we also have PSP, and inside of here, it's going to be in the game directory, and there's that update folder right there. So we now have everything we need. At this point, you can exit out here, right click, eject your drive, and take it over to your PSP. Back over the PSP, once everything's been transferred over, you just need to navigate over to your game column, go over to your storage, open up your storage, and then you'll find the ARK updater. Go ahead and fire this up. From here, all you need to do is press X or circle to install this, so pick your poison. Now, as you can see, it only took a few seconds there, and once it's done, I'd suggest pressing the square button in order to delete that update and then restart your PSP. Now once your system restarts, you can navigate over here, go over to your system settings, open up system settings, and check out system information. It should now show that you're running ARK-5 CFW, and if you are, congratulations, you're in a good spot. Now for our next example here, this is going to be a system which is running an old custom firmware like I showed earlier. This here is running 5.00 M33-4, so this one we're going to be updating with Despertar Del Cementerio. Now this is going to require a few things. First of all, like I said, you will need a battery that is going to be charged up. You also must have external storage of some kind, whether you're going to use an actual Memory Stick Pro Duo or you're going to be using one of these adapters, you have to use external storage. That means if you have a PSP Go with onboard 16 gigabytes of storage only, you do not have any external storage here, you will not be able to continue on. You will need to jump over to the Chronoswitch option, and I'll have a timestamp to that somewhere here on the video. Finally, this process is going to temporarily but purposefully brick your PSP. It's going to be part of the process, but in order to unbrick it, this is going to be very important. You need to make sure your left trigger is working and operational, because we're going to have to hold down the left trigger on boot up in order to get our PSP unbricked as part of this process. So for that, play a game, do something to test this left trigger here and make sure it works. If it does not work, you're going to have to repair it yourself, and if you do not repair it, you're going to have to go to the second option, which is going to be Chronoswitch. Again, I'll have a timestamp somewhere on the video here. However, if you have a battery, everything is working, you've got your external storage, and you verified your left trigger is working, we can continue on with this by moving over to the computer. For this here, all the downloads will be linked down below in the description, and the first thing you're going to need is Faster ARK. For this, we're going to be utilizing the for PSP users on older custom firmware option, because we're going to be using DC10 or Despertar Del Cementerio 10. For this, you can scroll up here, navigate over to Releases, and we're going to need two downloads. First, download Faster ARK PSP Full zip, and you're going to download the themes.zip. Next up, we need the 6.61 firmware file. So if you do not have a PSP Go, you're going to need to navigate into the PSP directory here in the Internet Archive link for the PSP OFW firmwares. Click on the PSP folder, navigate all the way down, and we're going to download the 661.pbp file. Otherwise, if you have a PSP Go, but keep in mind it must be a PSP Go with some external storage on there, such as an M2 card or a micro SD card in there. If you just have the internal 16 gigabytes of storage, this option will not work for you. But if you do have one of those cards available, click on the PSP Go folder and download the 661 Go PBP. We also need to check the integrity of the firmware to make sure we don't download a corrupted firmware. So I'd recommend pulling up this MD5 file checksum site and just keep it on the side, keep it somewhere, because we're going to need it in a few minutes. Lastly, if you're having any trouble extracting the archives, I'd recommend using something such as 7-zip. It's free and easy enough to use. When you have your downloads, you should have Faster ARK themes as well as the 661 PBP or 661 Go PBP if you're using a PSP Go with one of those external storage cards on there. For this, go ahead, grab these two zip files here. We can highlight the both of them, and we're just going to right click and use something like 7-zip to extract them right here. Now with those extracted, it's going to give us a PSP folder as well as a themes folder, and we just need to copy really all of these over here. In order to do that, make sure you have your PSP storage hooked up, navigate over to your drive, highlight the themes folder, the PSP folder, as well as the 661 PBP, right click, copy them, and we're going to paste them all into the root of the memory stick right here. If it gives you any options here to overwrite any files, you're going to want to say yes, and if it asks you to merge any directories, you're going to want to merge them. So there we go, that's all there is to it. To verify everything is copied over properly, you can navigate into PSP, Game, and we have these folders right here, which all look good. Next up, we can also go into the save data, and as long as you have ARK_01234, you should be in a good spot. Now the last thing we need to do before we take this to our PSP is actually check the file integrity of that firmware file. To do this, bring up the MD5 file checksum site and click right here. Navigate over to your PSP storage, find that 661 PBP, double click it and let it load in. You're going to have a file hash right here in the output section, and it's going to be a random series of numbers and letters. Now on screen, as well as in the description of this video, I'm going to have file hashes to both the 661 standard firmware as well as the Go firmware. And what you'll need to do is match them and make sure that they match to that firmware hash. If they do, you're in a good spot. And if they do not match, first of all, keep in mind, this does not matter what the case sensitivity is. So don't worry if the letters on the website are lowercase and the ones that you're looking at are uppercase. As long as the numbers and letters match in the same spots, you're okay. But if they are mismatching, make sure you have downloaded the correct firmware. If they are still mismatching, delete that firmware, re-download it, recopy it, and re-verify it to make sure that it is not corrupted. Once you verified it's good, we can exit out of this site. And from here, find your storage, right-click, eject it, and take it back over to the PSP. Back over at the PSP, go to your game column, go down to the memory stick, open it up, and look for the Despertar Del Cementerio application. Once you find it, go ahead and fire it up. Now, if you get an error such as this, that means you just need to reset your theme to its complete default settings, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. In order to do this, you'll need to exit out and let the system do a little bit of a soft reset. Once it resets, navigate all the way over to your settings, go down to your theme settings, and from here, we need to change our theme from whatever it was to original. Now once it's set like that, you also need to make sure that your background is also original, and if you want to change the color, you can certainly do that. I'm going to do this here just so it looks a little bit nicer on video. There we go. Now once that's all set up and it's been reset, we can navigate back over to the memory stick and open up Despertar Del Cementerio. You'll see right here it's successful because it's going to tell you to press either X or circle to begin the installation, so all you need to do is follow that instruction and now wait. And there we go, after a bit it should let us know that this was successful, so we just need to exit. By the way, if it exits but it does something odd like you can see it just turned off my system here, just go ahead, turn your system back on and continue. And here we go, with our system restarted, we're going to have to do one more thing before we actually utilize Despertar Del Cementerio. Now, I'm going to warn you all real quick, you do need to make sure this PSP that you're performing it on, you must make sure at this point that your left trigger right here is working. So play a game or do something to test that that left trigger works, because this next step is going to brick our PSP on purpose. And the only way to unbrick it here, at least easily, is going to be to utilize the left trigger. So this is going to be your last warning here. Again, I'm really stressing it. If your left trigger is not working here, you're either going to have to fix your left trigger, or you're going to have to use the third method here, which is going to be using Chronoswitch Downgrader. However, as long as your left trigger is working and you are okay with temporarily bricking your system, let's go ahead and continue. We need to go back down to memory stick in our game column, and we need to look for the CIPL flasher, and go ahead open it up. Once it loads up, the menu is pretty simplistic here, but it's going to ask us to press the X button to install the new CIPL. Now keep in mind here, yet again, final warning, this is going to brick your system. If your left trigger does not work, you will not be able to easily unbrick your system, so keep that in mind. As long as you're okay with that, press the X button, it's now going to install CIPL, and then it's going to reset. However, do keep in mind, like I've said, it is bricked now. So this is what's going to happen. Your system is going to turn off, it's going to try to reboot, and we're going to be stuck at this. Just wait for your system to turn back off. So now with our system completely turned off, because you can see there's no longer a green LED right here, you need to hold down the left trigger, and when you're holding down the left trigger, turn on the system. When you turn on the system, continue to hold down the left trigger. You're also going to notice that the memory stick LED indicator here should start going off, and if it does, that is a great sign. And there we go, we are now running Despertar Del Cementerio, so we'll now be able to recover our system, upgrade it to 6.61 custom firmware, and install ARK custom firmware all in one go from that one step right there. All you need to do is highlight install 6.61 ARK, and press the X button or the circle button depending on where your system is from. And from here, just wait. Don't touch your system, just wait a few minutes for this process to complete. And there we go, once it's all done, we can now either shut down or reboot the system. I'm going to choose to reboot. Now you'll notice your system will take a little bit longer to reboot, and it's going to be completely initialized like this, like you're setting up a brand new system. So just go ahead and walk through this process here. Once you go through that process, you should be brought to this screen here, which is our main XMB, of course. But now to verify this, what we can do is navigate over to, actually real quick, I'm going to change my theme settings. Let me just reset this here. This step is completely optional, by the way. I just want it to look at least a little nicer and to my own preference on here. So which color can we go with? You know what, this one looks fine. Let's go ahead and pick that. So either way, once you're all set up here, you can go to System Settings, scroll all the way down to System Information, and right here, check it out. You'll know this is successful because you're going to have 6.61 ARK-5 CFW. So congratulations, you've been able to brick, unbrick, upgrade, and remodify your system pretty much all in one go. The nice thing is with this as well too, not only you do have CFW available, but you also have Despertar Del Cementerio actually installed on the system itself. So check this out, you now have a nice built-in recovery tool, so from a complete cold boot, as long as you have that memory stick inserted, at any time when you turn off your system, you can hold down the left trigger, turn on your system, keep it held down, and after a few seconds it should boot up into Despertar Del Cementerio. So if at any time you want to perform any of these operations here, you can certainly do that. Now do keep in mind here, you do have to have CFW installed on the system, and this is installed directly on that memory stick. So if you ever decide to swap out or upgrade memory sticks or do any of that, you will have to reinstall Despertar Del Cementerio using these steps shown on here. On top of that, since you already have that installed, you don't have to go through the install process that I'm going to show later in this video, so you can just skip to this timestamp right here. Now for our last option here, this is going to be using Chronoswitch, and there's going to be a few things to keep in mind. First of all, your PSP itself needs to be on at minimum firmware 6.31 because that is the lowest firmware that Chronoswitch works on. Secondly, you are also going to need a battery in here charged up and ready to go, and it wouldn't hurt to hook it up to the charger while you're doing this because we are going to be using this to reflash an official firmware onto the PSP itself. And the good news is, unlike with Despertar Del Cementerio, well, you'll be able to use this on a PSP Go. You really just need storage, and that's all there is to it. So with that, go ahead and take your PSP storage and hook it up to your computer. For Chronoswitch, for the downloads we'll need, we're first going to get faster ARK. Now for this, I would recommend giving this a quick read over just to see what all it comes with, and we're going to be using the full variant. In order to get this downloaded, scroll up here, go over to the releases section, and there's two downloads we need. First, you can download the Faster ARK PSP full zip, and download the themes.zip. Next up, we're going to need the Chronoswitch Downgrader. I'd recommend giving this a good once over and a read here, and once you understand it, click over on the releases section, and then download the latest Chronoswitch zip. We're also going to need the official 6.61 firmware, so I'll have a link to the Internet Archive for this PSP official firmware's archive. For this, we can keep it simple. If you have a PSP Go, click on the PSP Go folder, and you're going to need to download 661go.pbp. If you do not have a PSP Go, click on the PSP folder, scroll all the way down, and download 661.pbp. There's also going to be this MD5 file checksum website right here, which you can click on and just put somewhere on the side because we're going to need this in a moment to verify the integrity of our download. And lastly, if you're having any difficulty here extracting any of these archives, you could use something such as 7-zip. It's free and easy enough to use. Now this is what your download should look like here, unless you're using a PSP Go, in which this is going to be 661Go. Keep in mind, there is a difference between the firmwares, so make sure you're only using the Go firmware if you have a PSP Go. Now for our file copies, let's go ahead and get these two extracted first. We're going to extract Faster ARK Full as well as the themes.zip. Highlight the both of these two, and we're going to right click and use something like 7-zip to extract them here. You're going to get two folders here, a PSP folder as well as a themes folder. Highlight the both of these, and we can actually just move them. So you can right click and cut or move them. Hook up your PSP storage, navigate into it, and in the root of the storage, right click and paste. If it asks you to overwrite any files or folders or to merge any directories, you're going to want to say yes. Next up is going to be Chronoswitch. We're going to right click the zip and then extract it out right here. This will give us a new PSP folder. You can right click this and cut it out, navigate over to your PSP storage yet again, right click and paste within the root of it. The last thing we're going to need here is this 661 PBP. So what we can do is prepare for this. We need to go into the PSP folder. This is going to be within our storage. Go into the PSP folder, go into the game folder, and you're going to see all of these folders here. If you see these, you've done the copy over successfully, but we need to create one more. You can right click and create a new folder or directory and call it update, all uppercase, all one word. Inside of the update directory, we're going to copy over that 661 PBP file. Now we need to rename this as well. If you're using Windows, you can click on View, Show, and enable file name extensions. Now you need to right click this PBP and rename it to eboot.pbp. Once that's been renamed, we can go back up one directory, go back another directory, and look in the save data directory here. As long as you have ARK_01234, you should be in a good spot and all these files have been copied over successfully. Now bring up your MD5 file checksum page and click here over on the input section. Navigate over to your PSP storage, go into PSP, game, update, grab the eboot.pbp, and give it a few seconds for it to hash and give you this series of numbers and letters. This is going to be your MD5 hash. On the screen here, I'm going to have hashes for the standard firmware as well as the Go firmware. What you'll need to do is make sure the numbers and letters that you see on your screen are matching the ones that are on screen here or in the description. It does not matter whether they are case sensitive or not, so as long as the numbers and letters are in these same spots, you should be good. Now, if they do not match, make sure you downloaded the correct firmware. And if you've made sure of that, delete your firmware, re-download it, recopy it, and recheck it here, because we need to make sure that the actual file hash is matching. As long as it matches, you should be in a good spot. Now, once that's all set up, we can right-click, eject our storage, and go back over to the PSP. Once we're back over at the PSP, navigate down within the game directory to your storage and open it up. And we're going to look for the Chronoswitch Downgrader. So go ahead and find that. It should look something like this, and fire up Chronoswitch Downgrader. Now pay attention to the text here because it might have some errors and other things that you need to pay attention to. You can see that mine has already verified my model. It's now going to check the checksum of that firmware file, which is a good double check. And once we're all ready to go, it will allow us to continue. So we can press the X button. Now you're going to get this text right here. Make sure you read it and understand the risks associated with it, and if you do, you can continue on. Now it's going to take several seconds at a black screen here to boot into the actual firmware updater, but keep in mind from here, you must have a battery on hand and it must be charged up. So if you don't have enough charge on here, make sure it's charged up. It also wouldn't hurt to hook up your PSP to a power source. Additionally, if you don't have a battery at all, you will not be able to get past this step until you have a battery and it's charged up. So keep that in mind. You can see here we do have the standard system software updater. So go ahead and continue on with these steps here. We're going to hit enter. Next up, we're going to have to agree to the terms of service. Once you're ready to go ahead, hit enter. And at this point, we just need to leave the PSP alone. Don't touch it, don't play around with it, don't do anything. Just leave it be for several minutes until it's done updating. And here we go, after a few minutes it should be complete, so we just need to hit the enter option here and wait for the system to reboot. And once your system reboots back over to the XMB, we should be in a good spot to now actually install ARK-5. To do that, go back over to your system storage here, and we're going to load up the ARK-5 installer, which looks a little something like this. Go ahead, find it, and fire it up. Now you can see here, we really don't even need to intervene, but it's just going to immediately start doing its thing, and then it's going to restart the system, and technically at that point, ARK-5 is installed. Yeah, that's all there is to it, but there's one more step here. We can go back into our system storage, and this time around, we're going to be launching the CIPL flasher. Go ahead, find it, and fire it up. Once it loads up, it's going to give us a few options here. You can press either X or circle to install CIPL. So pick your poison. It's going to install pretty much instantly, and it's going to take longer to restart here, but just wait for it to restart your system yet again. And there we go. Once it's been restarted, we can now verify this by pressing the select button. And if you do that here, you should see all the ARK-5 info right here, as well as the menu. So congratulations, you're now in a good spot. You now have the latest firmware running with the latest custom firmware running, as well as CIPL installed. So now we're going to do something that is optional, but would be recommended for some extra protections on here. The good news is, if you already use the Despertar Del Cementerio method, you won't have to mess around with this here. You can actually just skip to the next feature in this video, which is going to highlight the custom firmware features that ARK has. However, if you just did a quick upgrade from ARK-4 or you end up using Chronoswitch, we're going to install Despertar Del Cementerio right here on our system. So in order to do that, like I said, it's optional but recommended, but in order to do that, we're going to need to access our storage on our PC yet again. Oh, but keep in mind as well, if you have a PSP Go, things are still unchanged for you. If you're using a M2 card or you're using a modification that allows you to use a micro SD card on your system, you can continue on with this, but if you're only using the standard onboard 16 gigabytes of storage that's built into the system, you will not be able to install DC ARK. You must have a memory stick of some kind. For this here, there's two downloads we're going to need. One of them is going to be the Faster ARK full variant if you did not download it. If you've already downloaded it, you can skip this download, but if you haven't downloaded it, it's going to be in the Faster ARK page. Go over to releases, and from here we're going to download Faster ARK PSP full.zip. Next up will be the actual firmware itself if you haven't already downloaded this. So if you have a PSP Go, and again it must be a PSP Go using a memory stick, not the internal storage there. But if you have a PSP Go with some kind of removable storage on there, you can use the PSP Go folder and you're going to download 661go.pbp. Otherwise, if you do not have a PSP Go, navigate into the PSP directory here, scroll all the way down, and download 661pbp. This will all be available in the Internet Archive repository right here. And as I've recommended before, just keep this MD5 file checksum webpage on hand and up and running in the background because we're going to use it here momentarily. Now for our two downloads, we can first start by extracting out Faster ARK full. You can right click it and use something like 7-zip to extract it here. It should give you a PSP folder in which you can navigate in here, and what we can do is navigate over to Game, find DC10, and we're going to copy this out. Now go to wherever your PSP storage is, navigate to PSP, Game, and go ahead and paste it in right here if you don't already have it. You might have it already depending on which steps you followed. The next thing we need to do is copy over this 661 PBP or the 661 Go PBP, depending on which system you're using. Right click and copy out this firmware. Now go over to your PSP storage, and in the root of the storage, we're going to right click and paste. It should be next to your PSP as well as your themes directories. Now for our last step here on the computer, what you can do is bring up that MD5 file checksum site, click here on the input, find your drive for your PSP, navigate into it, and find the 661 PBP, then double click it to let it hash. It's going to show up in the output right here, and yet again on screen, I'm going to have your file hashes available. There's going to be one for standard firmware and one for Go firmware. Again, you want to make sure that these are matching. So with all that configured and ready to go, we can now exit out of here, right click and eject our drive and take it over to the PSP. When you're back over at the PSP, go to your game section, go to memory stick, open it up, and this time around, we're going to look for Despertar Del Cementerio. Once you find it, go ahead and fire it up. Now if you get an error like this, we're just going to have to reset our theme settings. To do that, go ahead and hit back. Once you're back at the XMB, navigate all the way over to Settings. This time around, go to Theme Settings, and for our theme, we need to set this from whatever it was to Original. Once that's been set, you can also change this background to Original, and you can also change the color if you wish to. I'm going to personally change it to something a little more readable, so There we go, that should be better on screen. Now once your theme has been reset to a stock setup, go back into the memory stick, find Despertar Del Cementerio, and fire it up. Right here, the instruction is pretty simple. Just press the required button to begin the installation, so I'm going to do just that. And now wait. Now keep in mind when you're doing this is installing everything directly to your memory stick. So in the future, if you ever end up upgrading your memory stick and you decide to migrate your data over, you're just going to have to go through the process of reinstalling Despertar Del Cementerio on that memory stick. And once it's all set up again, you should be in a good spot for some extra protection. And by the way, I'll show you how to utilize that once this is all complete. And once that's all done, all we need to do is exit. And congratulations, you've now set up Despertar Del Cementerio on your PSP for an extra level of protection. Now what we can do is actually show you how this works. What I'm going to do is press the select button and I'm going to shut down the system here. Make sure it is completely powered off. Now with this, you do need to make sure that your memory stick is installed, and you also need to make sure that your left trigger is working. So from cold boot, hold down the left trigger and then turn on the system like this. When it turns on, continue to hold down the left trigger on your system. You'll see now the LED indicator for your memory stick is going off, and now check this out, you're booting up to a completely different interface, which here, this is Despertar Del Cementerio. From here, you're able to reinstall 6.61 ARK, you can even reinstall 6.61 official firmware, perform NAND operations, check out some hardware information, boot 6.61 ARK from a memory stick, and then of course shut down or restart your system. I'm going to go ahead and restart the system, but there you go. With just a few extra minutes of time, you now have an extra level of protection available on your console. So now with this all rebooted, you might be wondering what is so different about ARK-5. Well, let me go ahead and show you all. First of all, you can navigate over to the extras column and you should notice a few things. You're going to notice custom firmware settings, plugins manager, as well as the custom launcher. Now, if you don't have this here, don't panic, I'm actually going to show you why. You might have one of these guys right here, which is a PSP Street, this just giant plastic black brick right here. But if we check it out, I'll go ahead and show you all, you could see that there's actually no extras column at all. That's because on the PSP Street, you have to navigate over to Game, and you have to scroll up, and you're going to find all your options here. Now mine look a little wonky because I do not have a memory stick inserted, but from here you should be able to find all your extra options. With that, we can now retire the PSP Street. Within your settings, however, we can navigate back over and go over to custom firmware settings, and just running through them real quick, you can see for our system options, you're able to either cancel out of this or you can reset the VSH, which is the whole main screen right here, just the X and B, restart the system, put it into sleep mode, or even shut it down entirely. We can also activate flash and WMA codecs, so even though I'm probably not going to need them, let me go ahead and enable that right now. When you enable it, it's just going to take a little bit to restart. Now there we go, once it's all been restarted, we can drill right back into the settings and continue from where we left off. So for this, here we go, custom firmware settings, USB read-only mode. I'm personally going to turn this off because, well, I usually know what I'm doing with USB. USB charging, you can enable that unless you have a PSP 1000. The clocks in-game and in XMB, I'm going to come back to that. With WPA2 support, this is not available on the PSP Street, but this does allow you to utilize more Wi-Fi networks, so that means you have more of a fighting chance of getting your PSP onto modern WPA2 at least Wi-Fi networks, which is pretty awesome. Auto Boot Launcher allows you to automatically boot into the custom launcher, which I'll cover later. Use extra memory, that should just be set to auto or forced, whatever you want to do there. By default it's set to auto. Memory stick speed up as enabled is quite good. The Inferno cache, I never changed that there. Skip Sony logos, you can change that if you want to or not. You can also hide pick 0 and pick 1 for all your applications and games. Hide your MAC address, hide your DLC, turn off LEDs, disable the UMD drive, disable the analog stick, get a more Vita style mute interface and I guess setup there in terms of functionality. You can also spoof your UMD region, which if you're playing just regular UMD games, you don't need that, but if you're using UMD movies, you are going to need to spoof your region to that. You can also change the VSH region as well too, and this one I actually need right here. This is going to be the confirm button, so I'm going to change that. But real quick, you can also reset these settings and even enable or disable QA flags. For the QA flag, all this does is give you debug settings right here, and within debug, you have NP environment, and you can also change your SSID prefix. I never touch these, but I do like having debug settings available, which is why I keep it enabled. Either way, because this is a Japanese PSP and I'm used to the wrong way of doing things, I'm going to change this here. So I need to do that, it's going to restart the system, and now I can start using it with technically the wrong way, I guess you can say. So now with all that sorted out, you can go back over to your extras and check this out. You also have access to a plugins manager, which this is what allows you to enable, disable, and even remove plugins that you might add onto your custom firmware. Just keep in mind there is a default Lita one here, and I would recommend just keeping that. Just don't touch it or anything, it's fine, just keep it there. Now the next thing here is going to be the custom launcher, which if you did not know what to do with those themes, I'll show you. It's just going to be right here, so we can fire this up. Once the custom launcher opens up, it's going to look a little something like this. You're going to have all your homebrew down in the middle, you're going to have your PSP ISOs on the left, and your PS1 games on the right. You can also hit the triangle button and you can go to the actual folder structure here so you can check out the file system. There's network settings, custom firmware settings, plugins, additional settings just for this actual custom launcher, and you can also exit this depending on how you want to exit. Now in order to change the theme on here, we can go over to our files. Once this loads up, we're going to look for the themes directory, which is right here. And from here, you can choose whatever theme you might want to. So go into one of these folders, open it up, find the theme.ark file. From there, you can open it up with your confirm button, whichever one that might be, and then you can either preview or install it. I personally actually like this theme here, so for this example, I'm actually just gonna keep this as is. But in order to exit out of this, we can hit the triangle button, go to exit, and let's go ahead and just exit back to the XMB. Now that we're back at the XMB, there's something I want to talk to you all about, which is rather exciting. And this here is in the form of overclocking. The one big thing, and I kind of saved the best for last, but the big thing with ARK-5 is that this actually allows true overclocking of the PSP. Now previously, you all might be thinking that typically you can overclock your PSP up to 333 megahertz. And while that's true, that's not necessarily overclocking. You see, we can go into our custom firmware settings, and from here, we can go over to our CPU clock in-game, and 333 is typically the highest that we can go. And that's actually a speed that Sony has allowed on the firmware itself. There's actually several games such as God of War that even run at that speed. But we can now actually clock higher than that speed here. Now do keep in mind, before you get all too excited, you do need to keep a few things in mind. First of all, do not go crazy immediately going to the highest value and trying to overclock your PSP. No. Not only that might not be a stable experience, but I do also want to preface this by saying that this is optional. If you are afraid of overclocking, don't do it. But keep in mind, if you do want to overclock, these are old systems here. You're going to be running them at higher megahertz than what was originally intended, and it is going to have some side effects. Your system might get a little warmer. You're also going to run your battery faster because it is going to be less efficient in terms of battery life. On top of that, if you damage any of the components or you damage your system, that is completely on you. It is not on me or any of the people behind ARK-5 or any of these developments. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're still interested in doing this, there's also another thing to keep in mind, which is going to be the silicon lottery. And keep in mind that not all PSPs are alike. Every single one is actually individual. So just because you think you have the newest model or one of the best models does not mean you can achieve that super high clock speed. In this example here, I actually have a PSP Go. It's a great system. I'd say it's my favorite PSP out of the ones I have, and you can even debate and say it's better than the 2000 I have. However, you cannot run it on that high clock. You can only run it up to 383 megahertz. I even have it right here, but if I go into my settings and navigate over to, there we go, CPU clock in game, you can see I did boost my XMB clock. Just for the fun of it, I just decided to do that. However, if you want to change the CPU clock in game, I could not get it to run stable on these higher ones. So this is what I'd recommend you all do if you're going to be trying your hand at overclocking. Keep in mind, anything above 333 is going to be considered an overclock. So first, what you can do is try 383. Go ahead, set that there, and then what you need to do next is try a game. Now this right here is my copy of Liberty City Stories running with a 383 megahertz overclock, and you can see right here, even just as Tony running through his apartment here, or I guess his condo, you could see that it's pretty smooth here overall, thankfully. It does nicely smooth it out, although do keep in mind, again, there is going to be a hit to battery life, and also the PSP does get a little warmer than usual from what I noticed, but it hasn't been anything that has bugged me directly. I'm showing this game here just because it is a little bit of a taxing game, and on top of that, I'm also going to be doing something that was not originally intended on the game here, so that's going to push it a little bit further. But you can just try your luck and see, and what I'd recommend doing is try and bump up the overclock slightly, try 383 megahertz, and just see if that works well for your system. And if it does, congratulations, you can stay there if you want to, but additionally, you could also try slightly higher overclocks and just do some testing, bump it up by one level, and then try to play a demanding game or really just any game that you know pretty well for a few minutes. Now, this is also what I would recommend to you all. If you are running some different overclock speeds and when you try to boot up games, you just get a black screen and you have to restart your system, that means that your system cannot take that level of overclock, so you must reduce the clock speed. Additionally, if you are able to run it at a higher clock speed and you notice that after a few minutes, games that you know for sure work seem to lock up, freeze, or have other type of technical glitches, that also means that while you can overclock the system, that overclock speed is not stable on your system. I know for this one I can run it at 403, but after a few minutes, games just tend to crash. That's why I'm able to run stable at 383. I get a slight boost in performance, it works well, but again, no two PSPs are alike, so if I got another PSP Go, it might have a higher clock speed available. And actually, if you mess around with overclocking, let us know of what speeds you're able to get on your system. Additionally, there's actually an application that comes with the full package of faster ARK. You can check it out right here if you go over to your game, and it's going to be this one here, which is the experimental overclock tester. And if you want to, you can mess around with this for a few minutes. Now, the way this works is you can change the target frequency right here, and then once you do that, the test will eventually start. So you can see right there, it is running. And what this is going to do is it's going to incrementally run your PSP at higher and higher clock speeds for certain amounts of time. And then once it gets to a point where it cannot clock any higher, the PSP is automatically going to turn off. And from there, on the root of your storage, you're going to have a text file which will give you a number, which will show the theoretical value of how high you can clock that specific PSP. Although, keep that in mind, it is strictly theoretical. I say that because I had quite a high number on my PSP Go, but like I said, in all actuality, I'm only really able to stably overclock it at 383 megahertz. So just keep that in mind. It's a nice application to try out, but don't take its number it gives you as the gospel for what your PSP can overclock to. Either way, that is about it for this video here. Hopefully it helped out. Hopefully you're all sorted out here. Hopefully you can have some fun experiencing, enjoying, and messing around with ARK-5, the new benefits it has, the new updates that are to come, as well as overclocking your system. Seriously, have some fun with this. Either way, that is about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. If I don't butt my PSP off the table. Hey Lily, we're updated now. Here you go. You can enjoy your system. Just there you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. Okay. Okay. Oh, she's gone.